is. We love America and all that freedom-loving Americans want to protect. Live from coast to coast and on your radio, it's For the People with Keith Allen.
We'll help you survive this thing called life. We're for the people. Whatever your source of stress or strife, for the people is there.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Keith Allen, and proudly welcoming you to this Thursday's edition of For the People on this October the 5th, 2017. And I got to tell you, the first hour, I apologize for affiliates. We just went way over. And then, man, the internet has been acting really nutty around here today. I don't know if it's all the people drawing off our servers. I don't know for the radio show, but sometimes the internet works flawlessly for weeks on end, and then all of a sudden it just, you know how it goes at home where everything's ticking along just great, and you have no idea. There's not even a single thunderstorm, but it's not perfect. But, man, when technology works, it's terrific. Anyway, probably had a few people saying, well, my gosh, the guy's gone long. But, man, when you talk about issues that you're passionate about, sometimes I tell you, I lose all sense of time. And so when you're producing the show by yourself, I have the control board right in front of me, microphones, computers, and all sorts of equipment here. I have to occasionally look up at the time for the breaks and all those other stuff. So anyhow, if you feel like at the end of the show, you say, oh my God, it's already over. That's what I'm kind of feeling the same thing. I'm like, I haven't been able to finish everything. And even in the news thread I'm reading, gosh, I didn't even get done with that story. So that's why for talk show hosts, why they expand the show, why an hour is never enough. 2 hours is not enough. So, in the future, it could be 3-4 hours. Yeah, there's just so many important issues and so many points that need to be made that it just never gets old. Never gets old. I learned something in the whole process of not only researching the stories, but also actually hearing it back, and it just kind of gives me new meaning for some of the stories here. Let's go to Vegas, where what the sheriff is saying is this mass killer, he's, in his opinion, led a secret life before the attack from what the research has been done. Sheriff Joseph Lombardo, he was talking Wednesday about logistics and that it was only logical to make the assumption that Stephen Paddock had some help at some point in pulling off Sunday's massacre. He had some help at some point in pulling off the massacre. He says, as evidence, Lombardo pointed to gunman Paddock's huge arsenal, explosive materials found in his car, and in his meticulous planning that went in it. I mean, it was like this guy was special forces. It was like this guy was a Green Beret. By the way, we had several of our Green Berets, I think 3 of them, that sadly died in Nigeria yesterday in an ambush. So a moment of silence for our men in uniform. And that's something that we do periodically here, and it's just important to realize the sacrifice that men and women in uniform, they go through. But anyway, as the evidence is sifting in, trying to get more perspective of Paddock and his plan, and they say also he had an escape plan. Even though he turned the gun on himself as police closed in on him in the casino before he killed 58 people, injured hundreds in the attack, all from the 32nd floor. But yes, authorities are still searching for a motive. And yesterday we were all hopeful to a certain degree that perhaps his girlfriend, Mary Lou, might shed some light on it, but she is not really saying anything other than, I didn't know. I had no idea that he was going to do this, had no idea he was planning it. And maybe she didn't. I hope she didn't, but, and maybe this is kind of like playing armchair psychologist or psychiatrist, but this is what talk show hosts do. We talk. You talk about things, so we talk about it. So if you're going to try to get into the side and say, you must have known something that was askew with this guy, something was off, that the elevator didn't run on all floors, because he certainly was insulting to you. Many people saw you getting insulted, that he demeaned you, devalued you in front of people. Thank God he didn't marry you. Can you imagine that? But, you were living like a married couple. I mean, you might just say it. Like in Florida, I think you live 2-3 years, you're considered, even though you may have not had a ceremony, it's your wife status. But they're saying that he had a secret life. That's what they say about the amount of ammunitions that he had, about some of his business dealings that Mary Lou did not know about. And they're analyzing his computer, his cell phone, and other electronics and devices and imaging. But so far they've found no obvious ideological motive, no clear connection to extremist or activist groups or outward display of mental illness, according to the Associated Press. But how does a personal, not a personal, but how does a perfectly sane person had 1,600 rounds of ammunition and several containers of explosives commonly used in target shooting that totaled, 50 pounds in his car? But it wasn't clear what, if anything, the Paddock plan with the explosives there. They're just finding out that this guy just had so much firepower that he could have done much more. That this man had plenty available. And so their point is, and I guess the reason I'm bringing this to you is that I would just say that they're on the right trail with their investigation, saying that he must have had help somewhere, someplace, and then he was ordering this stuff and from where it came from. And I would imagine that somebody's going to speak. There's got to be an award that's going to be, somebody's got to offer an award. The sheriff's department out there needs to, that anybody that has information, there's an award, because people seem to, not an award, but a reward. Thank you. But you can award the person a reward. There you go. See, that's a play on words. But people do react when it comes down to money. What they don't like is they get a bunch of loony calls, and then it turns out that there's nothing to it. But, it's worth it if you do find the information that you're looking for. This guy was meticulous. This guy, they say, knew how to stay under the radar because he worked for the U.S. government. Bookkeeping, kept the books solidly, disciplined, dressed well, was very meticulous, and he was a mail carrier, but knew how to keep a tight schedule, knew how to dot his I's, cross his T's, but this guy was very meticulous this way. Almost anal retentive, OCD, to cover his tracks. But only those that knew him closest. Who knew him? Who did he talk to? Who did he hang out with? Well, Mary Lou for a long time. I had imagined that they're going to try to pump him and others folks as much as they can to who he talked to, who was the confidant, who did he most spend time with. These are the folks that they're going to be interested in. I hope to God they find something to shut this network down. I believe he didn't act alone. But did he? Is it possible that one person could do something this horrible to cause this much carnage? One person? They say don't never underestimate what a person can do for good, I guess, now, and for bad. But that's where we're at right now. Just again, trying to figure it out, who he knew, where he went, and then maybe a possible link to Mary Lou Danley, which was Paddock's girlfriend, who he sent to the Philippines and was interviewed yesterday by the FBI in Los Angeles. 62-year-old said in a statement, read from the lawyer, it wasn't from her, that Paddock sent her to see family in her native Philippines weeks earlier, and she was still overseas at the time of the attack. She said he wired her money so she could buy a house for her family, and she was initially pleased, but later feared it was a way to break up with her. Paddock led such a low-key private life that no one seemed to know him well, and those who did had no sense he was capable of the deadliest mass shooting in modern history. This is the wife speaking through the lawyer. Other mass killings have left behind a trail of plain sight clues that helped investigators quickly understand what drove them to violence. Paddock had nearly no close friends, social media presence, or other clear connections to the broader world. Even the number 2 official in the FBI said yesterday that he was surprised investigators had not uncovered more about why a man with no obvious criminal record would cause so much bloodshed. There's all kinds of things that surprise us in each of these events, that the one in this case, and we're not even there yet. FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe said, "We have a lot of work to do," and they wonder if he had some sort of mental break at the time that drove him to start making plans for mass murder. So authorities were looking into these hints, those details, the kind of life that he lived, and the kind of victims and venue that he targeted. Said David Gomez, he was a former FBI national security and criminal profiler, and he says, "We may never know to 100% certainty," he said, "but they will find out." I've talked about autopsying the brain. I don't know. On our first hour, and if you miss an hour, like I say, you've missed a whole lot. But this bears repeating. Thomas Gunderson, he had heard the noise that he thought a speaker had malfunctioned, or maybe someone had shot off some fireworks, but then he heard the screams, and this 28-year-old from Newport Beach, California, realized that he was standing in the midst of a killing field. His name is Thomas Gunderson, and he heard the first gunshots, and he jumped into action, helping people to safely escape the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino. And in the early moments of the Las Vegas massacre, Thomas joined other concertgoers to evacuate people to safety. There were a lot of people helping and risking their lives for others, Thomas told me in a telephone interview. And in the midst of the chaos and carnage, Thomas kept wondering if what was happening was really happening. He says, "We heard the rounds going off, but we kept thinking, it's fake, he said. A split second later, a bullet plunged into Thomas' leg, and he says, I went straight to the ground. I didn't hurt, my body numbed up, he told me. I was overcome. I was covered in a pool of blood. I was shooting out. It was literally everywhere." Thomas said he dragged himself behind a row of bleachers. He says, "I was getting scared at the point," he said, "I thought I might bleed out." In a matter of minutes, two young women came upon Thomas and administered life-saving first aid. One of the women wrapped a belt around his leg, while the other got some men to carry him to safety. Thomas considers himself lucky. The bullet went through and through. He suffered torn muscles in his calf and nerve pain, but the bullet missed bone and arteries. It's hard to stand, very painful, he said. that makes what happened on Wednesday even more remarkable